Today I'm going to talk about federal laws that affect teaching in the United States. I'm going to talk about three laws: Title IX, Section 504, and the Age Discrimination Act. Title IX happened in 1972, and it prohibits sex discrimination in educational institutions. So what does that mean? Well, here's some examples of some things that were going on before Title IX. And, the big thing is that females and males were just not thought of equally in the workplace. Women were not really expected to have careers. So before this time, females, maybe you went to college, maybe you didn't. My mother went to college for 2 years, met my dad, and got married. And that was pretty typical. Women were expected to stay home and have babies. Men were expected to earn the money. So when you look at something like athletic scholarships, there weren't a lot of scholarships that went to women. They mostly went to men. And the females in teaching positions did not get paid the same as males who held the same position. And that was because the male was thought of as the breadwinner, and the woman, if she had a teaching job, it was kind of like some extra pay for the family, but not the main pay for the family. And then if you were a female student in a high school and you got pregnant, you dropped out of school and went and had your baby. And they used to call it, my mom would say, "Oh, did you hear about so-and-so? She went away." And when you heard that term "went away," talking about a high school student, a girl, that meant she got pregnant and they sent her away. I never knew where they sent her, but she didn't come back to school. This chart is a nice visual that shows the great disparity before this law and after for athletic scholarships. And you can see that the right-hand side, the males' numbers, while they go up, it's not a huge amount. And the women's is like the side of a triangle. They quadruple or more over this time. I'm going to show a short video by a woman named Dr. France Cordova. And she is a great example of how things have changed for women. And now that women, since this law, women do hold positions of power. Is it where we want it to be as females? Probably not. But has it come a long way? Absolutely. So this woman is now the director of the National Science Foundation, which is run by the federal government. And how did she get that position? Well, she's been an internationally recognized astrophysicist for many years. She's someone who chose to go to college, and she went against the grain for her time. But she's risen up the chain in the scientific community, which is a heavily male-dominated field. She was the first woman chief scientist at NASA, which is a huge deal for a male or a female. And then she was also the first woman president of Purdue University. In the scientific community, which is a heavily male-dominated field, she was the first woman chief scientist at NASA, which is a huge deal for a male or a female. And then she was also the first woman president of Purdue University. Here's a quote that I picked out that she said about before Title IX. Dr. France said, "When I went to school, teachers felt certain work was for boys. Girls didn't go to grad school. If you went to college, you got married." And she chose another path.
I think that Title IX was one of the most important pieces of legislation passed in this country. It's interesting. It's been largely interpreted as being a part of what's helped the sports world become more diverse. But of course, Title IX is about so much more. It's about every discipline being open to both genders. And I've seen it make a huge change in the classroom. It's empowered women not just to be athletes, but to be vocal, to let smart show, to raise their hand in class, to say it's okay to be knowledgeable about a subject. It's okay for the other guys in the class to know I'm good at math and I'm proud of it. And by the way, I'm a heck of an athlete. It's just given women an opportunity to shine in every dimension. And I always cite Title IX right up there with the pieces of federal legislation that I think were profound, transformative for generations to come.
So how does Title IX affect me personally in my role as a teacher? Well, one thing is that I know I'm not even a full-time regular teacher at a district yet, but I know that my salary is going to be exactly the same as someone else in my state with my same qualifications and experience, whether they're a male or a female. That's never even been a question in my mind. And when I'm teaching, I don't have any expectations that a male is going to contribute more to a class or that he's going to be better at math or a female is going to be better at English. Every student is different and it doesn't really have anything to do with whether they're male or female. One of the things I've had to learn is to take some of my gender biased remarks out of my vocabulary. For instance, I have a habit of saying you guys. And it's just an old habit. I don't mean anything offensive by it, but I've learned after starting this program that I really shouldn't say that. I can say you all or class, but to say you guys intimates that I'm only speaking to the males, and it's a subtlety for sure. It doesn't offend me when people say you guys, but it's just probably one of those terms that should go away. And in the high school that I sub at regularly, we have a full-time daycare for students. We call it the Young Families Program, whether they're male or females. If they have babies or very young children, we have a daycare for them. Now I'm going to talk about Section 504. Section 504 is part of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which is a civil rights act, and it protects students with physical or mental impairments that affect their learning. And it's a way to provide accommodations for those students so that they have more of a chance of success in the classroom. But it's not just open to anyone who thinks they might have a disability or a parent who thinks their child might have one. There's a whole process that a student and a teacher and a parent and administration go through to identify these students. It has to be something that is a documented and supported impairment. One of the biggest examples of the 504 in action is students with ADHD. So examples of some of the things that might be done to accommodate those students are allowing more time for assignments because they have problems with attention span. A lot of times they need more time for their assignments. They might run out of attention altogether and need to take a little break. One of the things we do in my school is we allow students to walk out of the classroom and go out into the fresh air and sit or walk around for a few minutes and then come back when they feel they're ready. Another thing is providing seating that can be more successful for them. Maybe they need to be set apart from students who are very social, and maybe those students can be social and get their work done, where a student with ADHD does not have that same capability and needs that quiet. So here's just a photograph of a child who may be someone with ADHD and is frustrated. You know, before this law went into effect, these students were, well, little Johnny, he's got behavior problems or he's just not smart. They kind of didn't know what to do with a kid like this, so there really wasn't necessarily special attention. So here he is, he's just like, he's spacing out, or he's just frustrated, or I can't do this. And now we have more of an attitude in the classroom that all children have the capability of learning, but some children may require some special accommodations or modifications to the delivery of the material or how they give their products back to the teacher. They might need something like that to help them be successful. And next I'm going to play a short video that is a young man narrating who talks about his experience with ADHD and how he's been able to feel successful in his school.
Hi everyone, my name is Mikey and Dr. Hinojosa asked me to share with you a little bit of my experience in school last year. I had always struggled so much in class, was unmotivated, and failed my classes, but a teacher referred me to 504 and it turns out that I had dyslexia the whole time. After my parents went to school for a meeting, I started getting a little bit of extra time on my assignments, was able to go to a different classroom for a little more help, and sometimes when I struggled reading the test, someone even read it to me, and I was able to understand the question. I finished the year with A's and B's, and am so excited to get this year started. Basically, 504 helped me out so much, and I found out that it even had helped a few of my friends too, without anyone even knowing. Many of them have conditions that are not as visible as others, like learning disabilities, diabetes, or epilepsy. Low vision, poor hearing, or a chronic illness may not be as obvious to everyone, but it affects them in school. Pretty much what 504 does is level the playing field, so we can all have the same opportunities and learn the same as all of the other students. Thanks for making a big difference for all of us 504ers. We appreciate and love you for what you do. I know I'll always remember my teacher for sure. Adios and good luck this year.
The third law I'm going to talk about is the age discrimination law, which was part of the Employment Act of 1967. And this law stated that employers could not mandate retirement at a certain age. Back at that time, the standard age was 65. And of course, these days, people live a lot longer. So I don't know if it was just forethought in 1967. I sort of doubt it, but it's working out very well for us now because I think the average life expectancy is somewhere, it's gone up. It's gone up 5 to more years since this time. I think now it's around age 80. And people are working later and later and later due to all kinds of circumstances, but at least now we have this law in place that says you cannot be mandated to retire at a certain age. And another thing is that employers may not take into account a person's age really in any matters of employment, whether they look at whether they hire someone based on age or not, whether once someone is in, if they're promoted, you can't fire someone just because they're old. You can fire someone if they're incompetent, but you can't fire someone if they're just because of their age. And we're lucky as educators that we have a strong union, the NEA, and that's one of the things that it does is protect us from age discrimination. Because it's one thing to have the law written, but it's another thing to actually enforce it or how it's enforced. Who oversees it, who mandates it, and who watches out for us. And this is just a little cartoon I found about the before and after. So there's a gentleman seated here who obviously is not in his 20s. I guess he's in his 40s or older. He's got the receding hairline, So the employer was saying to him, "Hey, it's okay. You didn't have to write this in crayon. We're not going to discriminate you just because if you're not young." So I thought that was kind of fitting. And then I really loved this. It's a photograph of the cover of a magazine, which is the NEA Today, and the caption being "Never Too Old." And I loved this because this is a woman who is, I'm going to guess maybe she's 60, and showing her as being an educator. And then how does this law personally affect me? Well, it affects me very directly. I am 55 years old and I'm going to get my teaching credential. And if you would have asked me 20 years ago if I could ever foresee that happening, I would have said no. But, I found my passion late in life. I still have plenty of energy. And I know that technically I cannot get discriminated against because of my age when I go to seek that opportunity. And what I'm finding when I go into a school and I sub and I've gotten asked to do long-term sub jobs, I actually feel very confident because I have a lot of that life experience behind me already. So there's some situations that I can just intuitively know how to handle that perhaps a young college graduate would not have that. So it definitely affects me directly, and I couldn't be more excited about pursuing education as my next career.